Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
Hey everybody, good to be here today virtually with you guys. My name is Ashley Van Stice. I'm a chef and a registered dietitian, and today we are going to be cooking power bowls. And so on your recipe handout, you will see on the front side there is a quote-unquote recipe, but I like to call it a formula because this is the type of recipe where you can mix and match leftovers that you already have on hand or quick cooking proteins or vegetables and create your own bowl. So I'm going to give you sort of the formula for doing this, and we're going to also create our own bowl here. Because some of the stuff that I have here today, brown rice, roasted potatoes, these things take a little longer to cook. I'm going to start cooking, and then we're going to talk about the process of making the bowl while we let those things cook. So first, the longest cooking item I have today is brown rice, which I have right here in this fine mesh strainer. And the first thing you want to do whenever you're cooking rice is to rinse it. So I've already measured 1 cup of rice, poured it into this strainer, and I'm going to rinse it with cold water. That helps to remove any dust, dirt, anything from storage, and then it also helps remove some of the starchiness from it. So I'm kind of rubbing it with my hand as I let the cold water run over top. Don't skip this step. It really helps the rice sort of, when it cooks, it separates a little easier, and I just think it makes a big difference in the end result. So that's our rinsed rice. In this pot, whenever you cook rice, I want to mention something about the pot first. You want to make sure you have a tight-fitting lid, not a lid that sits kind of halfway off the side or a lid that's a little too large for your pot. You want to make sure your pot has a lid that can trap all of that steam in there, because that is what helps make the rice cook properly. In this measuring cup, I have about 2 cups of water, which I'm going to pour into our pot. Whenever you're cooking rice, there's a ratio. It's 1 part rice to 2 parts liquid. And you don't have to use water. You can use vegetable stock, chicken stock as your liquid as well. So it's on high temperature. I'm going to add just a little pinch of salt here so that our liquid is seasoned, our rice gets seasoned. I'm going to put on the lid to help that come up to a boil a little faster. And brown rice takes, it takes a good amount of time to cook. It takes about 45 minutes to cook. So if you don't have that kind of time, you can definitely find frozen rice at most grocery stores. And that is like a simple 2-minute reheat, either in the microwave or on the stovetop. So you can check that out. They also have something similar to this type of packet. This is our lentils. But sometimes you'll find cooked grains in a packet sort of similar to this, and where you would, empty that into a bowl and then reheat on the stovetop or in the microwave. So there's definitely other options, ways to get that brown rice. The nice thing about brown rice is that it's high in fiber. It's different than white rice, which all of that fiber has been stripped out. Fiber is really good for keeping us full, for moving toxins out of our body as we digest food, and for keeping us regular. So it's nice to have that extra fiber from the brown rice. Let's give that a few more minutes. The other thing that we have today that takes a little extra time to cook are the potatoes. So we have 2 sweet potatoes as part of our vegetable of this bowl. And I'm just going to take off, I see a little bit of a gnarly end there. I'm going to take that off. Otherwise, I'm going to keep the skin intact. Another little piece there that doesn't look so great. So I'm going to cut this into rounds. And then I'll work on chopping it into smaller sections here. This type of potato that I have here is a sweet potato, but it's a specific variety called a red garnet. And you can see how orange it is on the inside. a little bit more orange than a traditional, just standard sweet potato. So from the round, I'm going to cut it into strips. And then from the strips, I'm going to cut it into more of like a cube shape. And that's going to help it cook a little faster. We're going to roast these potatoes in the oven. And I have my oven set to 400 convection. I like the convection setting on the oven when I'm roasting vegetables because it creates it turns the fan on inside the oven and it creates more of a browning. So I'm going to leave this here. I hear that the water is boiling. And I want to make sure our rice has plenty of time to cook. So this is our 1 cup of rinsed rice going in to the boiling water. You don't have to dry it or anything like that before it goes in. And you're going to bring it back up to a simmer, which it's already pretty quickly. It's already back up to a simmer. So just give it a stir. And then put the lid back on. Capture all that steam. Turn your heat down to a lower temperature, but you want to make sure it's still simmering in there. So I've got it on like a 2. 1 is the lowest. Okay, and then I'm going to set my timer here for 35 minutes. If I can figure it out. 35 and go. See if that sets. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll let that do its thing. Whenever I cook rice, I just multitask while it's cooking. So a lot of times what I'll do is start it way before I start any of the other part of the meal. So I'm talking if we're going to eat dinner at 6 o'clock, I go ahead and start the brown rice at 4:30 and just let it go, let it do its thing. Because what you can do is if it finishes cooking early, because it takes so much time, if it finishes cooking early, then you can turn off the heat, leave the lid on, leave it on the stove top. It's going to be totally fine. It's not going to overcook while you're waiting, until dinner time at 6 o'clock. So that's an easy thing to do. All right, so back over to the sweet potato. I'm going to just keep cutting these into cubes. There's definitely some vitamins and minerals in that skin, so if you don't mind keeping that on, it can be a good thing for nutrition. Or you can take it off if it bothers you. Having a sharp knife is always important. Makes your life in the kitchen so much easier. Being able to work faster, and just more enjoyable to cut. You can buy, pre-cut vegetables as well. And if you don't want to use sweet potato, that's the beauty of this recipe is it's so flexible. So let me just go, I'll hop back to talking in general, what is a power bowl? A power bowl can be anything, really. It's just a combination of some kind of starch, some kind of protein. You got your veggies in there, as well as a sauce. But you'll see on the other side of your handout, there's all kinds of ways you can combine flavors for this. And, oh, here, we have another sweet potato. I'll go ahead and do. So get creative. My best bowls are usually leftovers. Or creating something super simple as an element to things that I already have cooked. Or by-cooked. Like today, we're going to be using pre-cooked lentils as our protein. So there's really no prep there, just a reheat. Okay. Has anyone tried these red garnet sweet potatoes before? Raise your hand if you have. I'd be curious to see. Look for them in the store if you've never tried them before. They're sweeter and more orange than your standard sweet potato. Okay. So these are all cut. I put them on a parchment-lined sheet pan. The parchment is not 100% necessary. It's just helpful for cleanup. It creates sort of like a nonstick surface there. So general rule for roasting any sort of produce is the actual ingredient on your sheet pan, a little bit of olive oil, or your oil of choice, and a little bit of salt and pepper. And that is it. We're going to rely on the oven, the browning of the oven with that convection setting to really give us a lot of flavor. I like to just use my hands. Feel free to use a spoon to give this a nice toss so that all the vegetables are coated with salt, pepper, oil. And then spread everything out so that it's within one layer. You don't want anything mounded up because you want plenty of room around those vegetables so that they can release their steam and not actually steam, because you want that air to move around. So you might need to divide into 2 sheet pans if you don't have enough space. Okay, let me rinse my hands real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get that in the oven. Let's see. So our oven is at 400 convection. And we'll let these go for about 20 to 25 minutes. Let's see, do we have a timer over here? I'm going to set it on my watch. Set a timer for 25 minutes. Okay. So, 25 minutes. 30 now. There we go. So now we're going to work on some of the other elements of our meal. We have the protein, which is, like I mentioned earlier, the cooked lentils. So there's a bunch of these out there. Some of them are in a packet like this, and some of them are in a canned packet. And you can buy just plain cooked lentils as well. I mean, of course you can cook your own, but just this is an option if you need to save time. So I've never had this specific one before, so we're going to taste it today, and I'll let you know. It's an Indian flavored Bombay lentils. So let's see. Just going to slice it to open the container, and then we're just going to reheat it in a pot. Now, one thing about any item that's pre-cooked and sort of already done for you is that it usually has more sodium. So do be mindful of that and check if you're trying to reduce sodium, eat a low sodium diet. Double check the ingredient statement on the back, because I will say these are definitely, I would consider like higher in sodium, and an ingredient to watch and maybe not avoid actually if you are trying to eat a low sodium diet, because this particular container has 2 servings in here, and let's see, I'll tell you here in just a second after I get it all out how much sodium it has, but it's definitely on the higher side. Let's see. So 1 serving has about 520 milligrams of salt. So we'll see if it's worth it. Here in a second, I'll taste it. But yeah, if you're watching sodium, double check that ingredient statement for anything that's prepared, not just lentils. And if you buy them canned, they're going to have a similar amount of sodium as any other canned bean, because this is actually prepared with all these different spices and everything, whereas if it's canned, it's going to be similar to a canned bean where you need to add your own flavorings. And on your recipe, the suggestion is to season with curry powder. That'd be like a super simple way to season if you're getting canned or just cooked regular plain lentils. Okay. So that's our lentil. Now we're going to move on to the kale. I purchased baby kale in a package. This has already been washed. The stems are so small that they do not need to be, you don't need to take the time to take off, to de-stem them. So that's kind of a nice thing about this pack of pre-washed greens. Now your recipe talks about steaming the greens, which you can do that, but I am going to do something a little different and just saute them in a pan with a little bit of olive oil and salt. So steaming would be a way to cook them without any added fat, but it's such a small amount there. I feel like adds a little extra flavor. So I'm going to opt for doing the saute. So just going to move the oil around the pan. Make sure you warm up the oil before adding anything into the pan. So I've got it on about a medium heat here. Now the idea for a bowl wouldn't be to necessarily cook all of these individual ingredients. The idea is to utilize things that you already have on hand that are already cooked. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going through and cooking all of these things individually like I'm doing today. For this, if I wanted to create some sort of combo here, I maybe choose like frozen brown rice, some pre-cooked lentils, maybe leftover, maybe some leftover roasted vegetables. Maybe it's Brussels sprouts, maybe it's broccoli. It doesn't have to be potatoes. And then think about some of the other, maybe I have some raw cucumbers or something that I want to add in. Maybe I made a vinaigrette earlier in the week and that can be my sauce. So I use this sort of general formula for many, many meals, especially meals that I'm just eating by myself for like a serving of one, maybe it's lunch or a quick dinner. And you would be surprised at some of the combos that I've done. I mean, my kids had leftover hot dogs. I chopped those up, put those in. I mean, that was my protein. So then I like would build off that. Okay, what do I have? Frozen rice. I'll use that as my grain or my whole grain. And just kind of build off that with your sauces. Maybe it's barbecue sauce in a jar. Maybe it's an Asian soy sauce type sauce that you already have made. So the idea is just to get creative with the ingredients that you already have if you don't have time to cook all these individual components. Okay, so the kale is going in here with the oil. Some of it decided to jump out of the pan, so we'll get those back in. I'm going to add just a pinch of salt. Our rice actually needs to be turned down. I see it's going a little too wild over here. I don't want it to boil over, so I'm turning that down just a little bit. I may have had my oil a little too hot here. I hear it popping. Super, super easy way to cook greens is simply sauteing them with a little oil. It's similar ingredients to your roasted vegetables. It's just a different way to cook them. It's a different cooking. It's roasting versus sauteing. And it's so quick. And did you guys see? I don't know if you guys saw this. I'm just going to show you. This is the container that they came in. It's just baby kale. But you could also use spinach, collard greens, any other sort of green that, like a hearty green that you can cook down. Or another option, hey, have it raw if you want to. You can definitely mix raw and cooked. Actually, we're going to mix raw and cooked vegetables in this bowl. Did anybody raise their hand on the sweet potato? I was just curious. Okay, I'm so excited for the day that we can all come back in person. I think it's going to be so fun to see you guys. I feel like it's been such a long time. I got a new job. I don't know if I'd mentioned this, but in January I got a new job as the teaching kitchen coordinator at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. So they have a teaching kitchen in a building kind of like this kitchen, where it's connected to an outpatient clinic, high-rise, with all different specialties in the building. And we are doing this Power Bowl concept with teenagers that are newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and their family. And so the kids are learning about what is a whole grain, what is a non-starchy vegetable. They're cooking hands-on and making this power bowl for themselves and their caregiver, or their parent or their siblings, whoever they've brought with them to the clinic. And it has been the funnest class for them. The kids are getting to, they're teenagers, they're getting to use knives, cook with heat. It's really cool to see. So I thought, why don't we do that same concept here, but use more, like our ingredients for our bowl at Children's is like a Southwestern flavored bowl. And I thought we could do the same concept here, but bring in some of those spices. Let's use, some different vegetables. Make it a vegetarian bowl, because we all know that plants are so powerful for healing the body, for inflammation, things like inflammation. So that's what I've tried to do here today. All right, so our greens are pretty much done. I'm going to turn that off. They've cooked down quite a bit. Let's see. Okay. The rice is still going. It has about 20 minutes. Our lentils are slowly reheating here on a very low temperature. And, they smell good. Yeah, very nice. And so now I'm going to make our sauce while those things finish cooking. So let me rinse off my hands here. Okay, we're going to make a sauce. It's a cilantro chutney. And we're going to blend it all up in the food processor. It doesn't have very many ingredients, so don't be nervous about the name chutney. Okay, so we have one bunch of cilantro. I've already rinsed this with water. I'm going to just remove the thicker stems towards the bottom. Save those for something else, maybe a vegetable stock or something. And then I'm just going to chop these in half and add them to the food processor. We're going to let the food processor do all the chopping for us in this chutney. Gather any leaves that fell down. And then we're going to add 2 cloves of garlic. Let's see, here we go. So just separate that garlic. Wow, that's a huge, no, that cannot be just one. Let's see. You never know with garlic. Sometimes it's really small cloves, sometimes it's huge, but this has got to be more than one, right? Yeah. That is one, though. That's pretty big. No, it's not. Just kidding. There's more in there. Okay, let me see here. If you have one that's really, really huge, ignore the recipe and just use one. You don't want this to be like a garlic bomb. I know there's that saying where you can never have too much garlic, but actually you can. We had one recipe. I used to work at Good Measure Meals, and I did all the menu development for them, and we had this one recipe that had a typo. And instead of, let's call it 1 cup of garlic, because we cooked like a mass amount, it said like 1 pound of garlic. That was definitely too much garlic. Okay, so this looks like I kind of split that one in half, and that's what I'm going to use as my 2 cloves. So just give it a whack. Make sure you remove that skin. That's not going to have any flavor, so get rid of the skin. And then, because honestly, I was going to chop it, but because it's going in here, you do not need to take the time to do that. Just throw it in your food processor after you get the skin off. And then we're going to add a little bit of salt. Here it is. A good pinch of salt. And then some pepper. Always use the freshly ground pepper just for more flavor, a fresher taste. And then we're going to use the juice of a large lemon. Let's see. This lemon, when you pick out lemons in the store, it definitely makes a difference. Choose some lemons that are softer, that you can actually squeeze and there's some give. If they're rock hard, that probably means they're pretty old and they're not going to have a whole lot of juice in there. Just kind of trying to also help soften it up by rolling it on the cutting board, cutting it in half, and then I like this tool here that's a juicer made by OXO to help us get that juice out. And if you end up with a hard lemon, maybe buy 2 just in case to see, because you never know how much juice is going to be in there. This one's doing all right. If you want to really soften it, if you're struggling to get it to roll it on the cutting board, you can microwave it for maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds to soften it up. Limes do not have any seeds in them. They're not like lemons that are full of seeds. Limes do not have any seeds. So you could actually, if you want to use like a fork, you could squeeze it right into the mix here. So there's no measurement on your recipe other than just the juice of 1 large lime. And then we're going to taste it after we blend it, and we may decide we want to add more lemon, which we can do. Okay, so that ended up being about, let's see. Oh, that's not a good measurement. That's ounces. Okay, that's not very helpful. So I'm just going to pour that in. I would say if I had to guess, maybe 1.5 tablespoons, something like that. Okay, so that's our lime. Now we're going to do olive oil, 1 to 2 tablespoons. Again, this is kind of a flexible recipe. You don't know how big your cilantro bunch was exactly. You don't know how much lime came out of you don't know how big your garlic is. So maybe start with like 1.5. You can always add more. You can't take it out. So that's our olive oil, and then I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of water. It definitely needs some liquid in there to get going to blend. And we don't want it to be too oily or too lemony. Okay, so that's everything. Just put your lid on here and turn it on. All right, let's scrape down the sides a little bit. Make sure we get it all in there. I still see some chunks of stem and leaves that need to be chopped up a little bit more. And I'm seeing that it doesn't have a whole lot of liquid here, so I might go ahead and add that rest of that olive oil and maybe a little bit more water. Let's try that so that it can really get in blended. So that would be another 1/2 tablespoon of olive oil, and then another tablespoon of water. And then we'll taste it. We'll see if we need to add more lime or salt or whatever. All right, let's see. Which way does this go? I think, there we go. Okay, it definitely moved around, was able to move around the container here a little easier. Oh yeah, this is looking great. Everything's really small, chopped. It smells delicious. Let me go grab a spoon so we can taste it. Or if you were here, you could taste it. Let's see. I've also done this similar thing with lemon and basil. So substitute out your cilantro for basil and your lime for lemon. Ooh, yeah. I like that. I think I'm going to add a little more lemon and just a little bit more olive oil. It's kind of like a pesto-y sort of thing without cheese and nuts. Okay, so just a touch more olive oil. And then a little bit. I'm going to do like another half of a lime since we have it here. And this is really, so like Nothing that I'm cooking here has a whole lot of flavor. Like the brown rice is pretty boring, just plain. The sauteed greens are pretty plain. You know, the potato doesn't have it's pretty cooked with minimal flavorings. Now that chutney, I mean not the chutney, but the lentils are going to have a strong flavor, but your sauce could be your one thing that has like all the flavor. So another thing you can do is if you like to meal prep, sometimes I'll see something in my refrigerator that just like needs to be cooked. Like it's going to go bad. It just needs to be cooked. Like sometimes before I go to the grocery store, if I have time, I will make sure I cut up the carrots we have left over, or the celery we have left over, and have it ready to go so we can eat that first. Or if we have things that need to be cooked, like greens, I'll go ahead and cook it without a plan, just to roast it. Like just roast a bunch of vegetables, whatever we have left over before I go to the store. And then that way we have some cooked items just to kind of mix and match and kind of make meals without a plan during the week for lunch or quick reheats. So that's an idea for getting yourself ready to make some kind of power bowl. You don't have to have a plan. You can literally just look in the fridge and figure it out. But if you have herbs that are going to go bad, this is a good sauce. It doesn't have to be cilantro. Like I said, it could be basil. It could be parsley or a mix of different things. Okay, so I'm going to this is good. I'm happy with this, so we're going to leave that as is. We have, let's see, how much time on the rice? About 10 minutes on the rice and probably a little less time on those potatoes. Let's check the potatoes. Okay, so at this point, you don't have to take them out and move them around the pan if you don't have time. But since we have time, taking them out, whatever vegetable you're roasting, taking them out of the oven and tossing them a little bit kind of helps to create more even browning. I'm done with everything on this cutting board, so I'm going to move this back here and make some space for the pan. Actually, we're done with that. These are just vegetable scraps. Okay, so I'm going to put like a hot pad here. Whoops. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So rosemary, so there's herbs that are considered to be delicate herbs. That would be parsley, cilantro, basil, chives, mint. And those herbs tend to be better raw, like not cooked. I mean, you can cook them, but they sort of lose their flavor. They're so delicate. If you put them into a soup or into a roasted vegetable or something like that, they kind of all the flavor just cooks out. And then there's like these hardier herbs, like think rosemary, thyme. Those are the two that I'm thinking of. There's more, but those types of herbs do better cooked. Think of your like rosemary roasted potatoes, or the rosemary that you stick at the chicken, like to roast with the chicken. Thyme is another one. It kind of needs to be cooked to really bring out the flavors of it. So I would shy away from doing like a heartier herb in this sort of raw sauce. This is like your raw, delicate herbs that don't need to be cooked type of blend. But you could combine like parsley and mint and cilantro in your chutney all together. You could add basil in here. You could do a whole mix. If you're, maybe you're trying to clean out your garden and you've got like all this, and this mix freezes really well too. So if you have a ice cube tray, you can pour, like tablespoon of sauce in each little ice cube and then freeze it, wrap it in some saran wrap and freeze it. And then once it's frozen, you can transfer those to a Ziploc freezer bag to store. And then if you're packing your lunch for work and all you have to do, and you have like a microwave at work that you're using, you can just pop one of those frozen cubes into your dish, and then when you reheat it at work, it's probably going to thaw, by lunch, or you can use the microwave to reheat it, and it just sort of, you can mix it all into your dish. If it tastes good like this, it's going to taste good when you thaw it. So yeah, and you can do that with a vinaigrette. You can do that with most any sauce that you make. So it doesn't have to be this particular blend. Okay, so let's pull out those sweet potatoes. I don't know what happened to the hot pads. Do you know where the hot pads ended up? I'm not seeing them, but they're around. They're usually hiding around here somewhere, but okay, so I'm just going to do it right here in the stove while we look for those hot pads. I don't want to burn the countertop. So I'm just going to, don't do this at home. Just going to use that spoon to pull that out a little bit and just give these a toss. And actually my 25-minute timer just went off, but I'm going to keep letting these go. They don't have very much browning at all. They actually look like they might be totally cooked, but every oven is a little different. Some cook hotter than others. So I'm going to let that keep going. And we'll wait until the rice is finished, and then we'll check that sweet potato again. Okay, so what questions do you guys have about bowls? Any flavor combinations? I've given you some ideas for flavor combinations. One of the first ones listed here is breakfast. So don't feel like you have to limit this to lunch or dinner. You can definitely do like a breakfast bowl. One idea that I have here is grits with some chopped red onions and peppers, some scrambled eggs, maybe some salsa, and some cheddar cheese. So your grits is basically your grain or your starch. Your onions and bell peppers are the vegetable, and then your scrambled eggs are the protein, as well as the cheese, which is sort of like your topping. You could go Mediterranean and use like farro would be your grain. You can add some tomatoes and cucumbers with some chickpeas, some Italian vinaigrette, hummus, olives, feta cheese. You could do more of like an Asian flavored bowl with brown rice, broccoli, carrots, any kind of stir-fried vegetable. Add some chicken in there with some soy sauce and some cashews. You could go Italian with skip the grain altogether and use a pasta, whole wheat pasta with like a sauteed spinach, mushroom, onion. Add some ground turkey with Italian seasonings, some pesto, Parmesan cheese. So the sky's the limit, guys, on flavor combinations. Just use what you like. Use what's on sale. Use what you already have in the refrigerator. This is a good tool for cleaning out the fridge right before you go to the store. I don't know. I just love the concept. It's also very balanced in terms of nutrition. So by combining the protein with the whole grains, it's a combo that helps keep you fuller longer because you're getting the carbohydrate, which are quickly digested and used for energy, but you've got that protein there, which makes it digest slower. So, and then, of course, all the colors of the fruits and vegetables are going to provide your antioxidants as well as your extra fiber and all of that good gut bacteria that you need for digestion. Okay. Rice is looking good. Everything is looking good over here. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab a clean cutting board so I can cut up this red cabbage. And this is not going to get cooked. This is going to actually be raw. And red cabbage is pretty mild in flavor, especially if you cut it really thinly. So, let's see. Cabbage is one of those vegetables that just keeps giving, even though pretty small. When we start cutting into it, it just gets so big. So you're going to have a base here where it was connected to the plant. Trim that. And then it's going to give you a flat surface to cut. Put your hand in sort of the tunnel position and just go straight through the center. Then you'll see you've got a core in there, a white core. We want to get rid of that because that's going to be really tough. So again, turn it, put it on the flat surface, use your tunnel hand position, and just go straight down. So we've got it into quarters now. And then we're going to cut at a diagonal to remove that core. And now we're left with all the good stuff. Remove any leaves that look sort of, I don't know, rubbery or old. And then I'm going to cut it again to give us some smaller pieces. And then find a flat spot so that it doesn't move around too much. And then just go straight down with your knife into thin slices. All right, so the teenagers can do this, guys. Teenagers who've never used a knife before. So don't be nervous about cutting. Maybe you've never cut cabbage before. It's not too hard. You can actually use the food processor too if you want to have that do the work for you. That's totally fine. So, but also you don't have to limit cabbage to coleslaw either. This is a nice way to eat it raw. Okay, let's see. The rice is beeping. That means it's been 35 minutes. Let's see. How do I turn that off? Timer 0. Okay. Okay. I think that's good. So I'm just going to leave it here, and I've turned off the heat now, but I haven't opened the lid. The steam is all still in there. I'm just going to wait until we're ready to plate, just to give it any final time to absorb any extra liquid that's in the bottom. I don't see any liquid in there, but it's not going to hurt it to just sit there and steam with no heat. Okay, so let's put this aside. This is plenty of cabbage for our bowl. And I'm going to pull out those sweet potatoes. And then we'll just work by simply, so our whole grain is our brown rice. Our protein today is the lentils. And the vegetables we have is the kale, the cabbage, and the sweet potatoes. And our sauce is the chutney. And we also have, if you would like to get fancy, since we have extra lime, you could also do a lime wedge to serve it with as well. So we'll do that on the side of our bowl. This is the bowl I have. Actually, I'm going to show you, I have plenty here to plate too, so I'm going to show you you don't have to use a bowl. You could plate it on a plate. So I'll show you what it looks like on a plate and in a bowl. Why don't we go ahead and do the rice? So I'll put the rice down. Oh, that's funny. I thought I turned it off, but I really didn't. There we go. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So, the rice did a great job. It absorbed all that liquid. And it is nice and fluffy. So I would recommend maybe a cup, 3/4 of a cup or 1 full cup of rice. Put that at the base. I'll do the other one on this plate. Right in the center. Something like that. Yeah, that might not. I think that's probably it may melt. Okay, so we got brown rice, and then let's do our lentils next. Maybe about 1/2 cup of lentils or so, right on top. Ooh, these actually have beans in there too. Surprise, these have like big red kidney beans, it looks like. These look really good. I'm just going to divide it between two since we had 2 servings in the pack. Okay, and then let me see if I can find some tongs here. So I'm going to grab this bowl, bring it over to our greens, so we can add some greens there. This is looking so pretty. So greens on the one half there, one side of it, and then just take your cabbage, maybe right in the middle, create some height. When it comes to the serving size of the greens or the vegetables, I would say add as many as you can handle. There's no limit on greens. I'm sorry, there's no limit on vegetables, is what I meant to say. This is our lime on the side. Stick that down in there. Let's see, we've got our chutney. We'll get those potatoes out in a second too, whenever we find something to pull them out with. Okay. Let me grab a spoon for this. Okay. This is just going to be above drizzle. Get it, you know, just make a mess with it. So like that's what when it looks the best is when it's so I'm doing like a couple tablespoons. We've got our sweet potatoes going in. Something like that. And then over here on our plate. I mean, this is a meal, guys. Ooh, this will really fill you up. And look at all that color. Okay, so let's see, I'll put it right here so you can see it. We have our bowl and our plate. Delicious. Yeah, I'm gonna dig in and taste it and let you guys know what it tastes like here. I'm gonna taste those lentils and see what they taste like. Curious, super curious to see. So I'm grabbing a bite to try to get the lentils, the rice, the sauce, and try to get everything in one bite. That's gonna be a big bite. All right. Don't look while I stuff my face. Oh good. It's so good, you guys. It's going to be so nice to have you guys back in person. That chutney is amazing. That's what gives it so much flavor. And these pre-cooked lentils are great. I'm a fan. Cool.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.